promise truth, but witnesses are disappearing. Yo, despite my drama, I don't see no sense of caring. Yo, I smile deep down, it really hurts. They promise to put victims and their dignity first. They don't seem to recognize my violations. They tell me it's a process while I'm dying waiting. I see former perpetrators being reinstated. Truth seeking is hard when the truth is being stated. Justice denied every day, it's delaying. If you a victim, then you know what I'm saying. I am a victim of systematic abuse. How we gonna reconcile when we don't even know the truth?
My name is Fatou Diatta. I'm a Gambian. I have 4 biological children and 4 adopted children too. So 8 in number. I was having a fashion shop and a tailoring shop until 1995 when I was sick, though it was not severe, but I decided to go to MRC. I'm always happy to say that I'm the first Gambian woman who first stand in public, nationally and internationally, to disclose my HIV status. There are patients whom you know that if there are people who know that they are HIV positive, they abandon them completely. There was this lady in the support group. She was pregnant, though she was married, but she was, because they say that if you have HIV and you have a baby, if you give birth, you may transmit the virus to the baby. The very day she delivered at RVTH, I was the first person she contacted to. I went to the hospital. He said, here, the child is yours. I will not take him home. I said, wow, but this is serious. She said, I will not take this child home or I leave him in the hospital. So this is how I started. I adopted the child at day 1, since when he was in the incubator. I was with this child. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2016 at the age of 13. He was drowned at sea. So I was in the support group, having meeting everywhere. So it's from those meetings that we used to conduct. Through that meeting is where the ex-president recognized us. I think our coordinator have a call from the vice president's office that he said the president said that he have the cure for HIV. So he wanted 10 people from the group to go and start the treatment with. We went to his office and he welcomed us, started talking so many things about HIV, that we people are great, we are doing wonders, we are trying to sensitize people, so many things. So he is behind us. But we really don't know that behind us will lead us to something which, you know, that will bring will bring human rights violation in our lives.
This period has been the darkest in our history. People were killed, people were jailed, people were tortured and forced into exile for merely just speaking up for our rights, merely speaking up to have our freedoms respected and guaranteed by the same people we entrusted our political power to. We grew in that atmosphere where, based on all these things that were happening around us, we had to be quiet.
I grew up in the streets, happily playing around with friends. I remember going to the fields after school and playing football, and we had a peaceful childhood. Even though we lived in a dictatorship, I was aware of the rumors about killings, arbitrary detentions, arbitrary arrest of political opponents, and many other people, just because they had divergent views. I came to realize the extent of bad, that regime really, perpetrated on Gambian people when my father became a victim, when he was killed for merely leading a protest. I lost a breadwinner, I lost a role model, and I also lost hope. I lost hope of a better future for myself and So did a lot other people like me.
When we start drinking this concoction, I was the second person to get in glass house to drink the medication. But 10 minutes after I drank the medication, I was like, the sky was like turning. So automatically I became unconscious. So they lay me on a stretcher. I can hear people talking, but I cannot respond. I cannot do anything. Then I heard Dr. Nyai telling him that, sir, can we take her to hospital? He said, no, she is going to be fine. So it's 3 days now. Now he extended to 1 week. 1 week, 1 month, 1 month up to 9 months, we were there. I'll be vomiting the whole day. So when I start vomiting, if I vomit, he will give me again. He will give me again to drink it. So all throughout the treatment, I was like unconscious because I cannot eat. I lose appetite, I lose weight. I was stressed because I was kept in one place, which you know that was not my will, and it was not my wish to be staying there. And the worst part of it is that I never wear something which you know that my breast or my back is uncovered. And you will be lying down on the bed. You will undress, put on a towel. You undress completely. You just wrap on a towel and go to the bed and lie down. Then he will start massaging you. The president himself.
My name is Rohi Jadama. I worked as correspondent and editorial coordinator for Journalists for Justice in the Gambia in collaboration with the Gambia Center for Victims of Human Rights Violation. Part of the work that we do is to interview victims of human rights violations and then give them agency to demand for justice. We created an online platform called the Victims Bantaba, where we posted stories of women like these victims. I previously worked as a judicial reporter for Foreign newspaper. I always knew that I wanted to be a human rights activist, and I could only do that through working for Foreign newspaper because they are a human rights newspaper, I will call it. People come to the office on a daily basis to report their encounter with the police, the NIA, how their family members went missing without trace. Some of the challenges that I encountered was security search at the court. Police were intimidating journalists because they feel like we report everything that we see. We don't only limit ourselves to what happened at the court. But after the case or before the commencement of the case, we observe detainees or accused persons brought to court who couldn't walk and had to get help from the police officers to escort them to the toilet. From there on, we will include this in our stories to tell the public, general public, that these detainees or these accused persons are also being tortured because they couldn't walk. When they were being arrested, they were healthy, they were walking freely, but now they had to have help from people. They have to get help from people. So I could remember some of the victims like Fatoumata Kamara, Fatoumata Jawara, they couldn't walk. All they do was to cry at the dock. They needed assistance because they were tortured when they were in detention.
Where during the morning when we are going to State House, they will go with us. When we are coming, they will come with us. And the security was also there, that is the paramilitary, who were at the gate. So which means that you cannot go out and you cannot have a visitor. We were just like prisoners, but in a different manner. He don't want anybody to come near us to reveal the secret, what was happening, or to see our condition. Some people, they got sick there. They don't take them to hospital. We seen them going down gradually until finally when they died. And if they died, I don't know what happened next, because at the end of the day, it's their family who will take them and bury them. I don't know whether he even pay condolence to the family of those deceased, we don't know. But I saw people get sick, more sicker every day, and they continue to drink the concoction until they died. So when I was tested again, they still see that the HIV virus is in my system. So the treatment is not true.
You're welcome. This is our office.
My name is Priscilla Yago-Cisse. I am one of the co-founders of WAVE. WAVE is the Women's Association for Victims Empowerment. We really need to look at righting the wrongs of the past. They know who caused them violations, and they know who have done acts to them which has resulted in their maiming, their injuries, the death of their family members, their lack of livelihood, economic support and all that. They know those individuals. They want to see justice. They want the never again.
What revived hope in me was the transitional justice process in the country that started in 2017, that had a goal to bring to book the perpetrators of these heinous crimes against Gambians, and also to remedy, the injustices that were meted on people, and also the institutions that were used to do these atrocities.
For me, transitional justice means giving the platform to victims to recount their ordeal, the experiences they've had to go through, and then giving them access to justice for them to seek justice, giving them reparations, and then reconciliation part will come later after all of these things are achieved.
So the exhibition that we have here is called the Duty to Remember. It's on the Duty to Remember project. As part of TJ, you cannot forget what happened. So, and in order to keep it relevant, the stories of victims and what happened, the truth needs to be in the forefront. And realizing that also that people are going to move on as we go. The transitional justice process is just that, a process, a journey. We all are going to pass through it, then the next generation is going to come and pass through it. So there has to be that context when they come on board to say, why are we in this transitional justice process? There have to be that context. So in that sense, it's very important for them to have a place like Memory House, which is an exhibition center to honor and remember the victims of human rights violations.
When change happened in 2016, it represented hope for us as young people, but it also represented hope for victims of human rights violations for 22 years. And that hope was evident in our participation as young people in the transitional justice mechanisms that were put in place to address the injustices that happened, but to also make sure that all the injustice and abuse that happened to Gambians in the past never gets to happen again.
Working at the TRRC, I could say, was one of the greatest experiences that I've encountered. It has given me the opportunity to come in contact with victims of different human rights violations. Ranging from killing, disappearing, and particularly women that have gone through sexual violence.
We provide mental health and psychosocial support to victims of the former regime. And our particular focus at Fantanka is women and children whose rights have been violated. We have seen that during the TRRC where victims would just come a day before and they just, not prepared. They would be put on the spot to talk about their violations.
So testifying in TRRC was that going there, telling people what has really happened. Because I see TRRC as a platform where you know that people will come and talk about their experience, what has happened to them or what has happened to their loved ones. Whereby before that, before the TRRC, when people talk about the human rights violation, some people will say it is not true. Jame did not do that. Jame people did not do that. So many people were talking. But when people came to TRRC and talked about their experience and what happened to them and what happened to their loved ones, it was like, wow, the whole world know that this story is true and this is what was happening in the Gambia.
We had been yearning for a day or a system, a process that would really give us the opportunity to talk about our violations, which was totally impossible in the former regime. It is also a process that would allow victims to recount these issues and put them into record. And also it is an opportunity to correct the wrongs that happened, and also for our country to realize, the wrongdoings that were happening and accept it, and then deliver justice. And then from there, we can start to reconcile. That was the hope the TJ process gave me.
It went very well, the TRRC process, the hearing, the truth-seeking process. We did very well in gathering a lot of the information and the issues, and the recommendations you will find have been in terms of prosecution, in terms of reparations, and in so many different other aspects, institutional reforms, which is what the idea was at the beginning.
They really did a good job. I know there are concerns, there are challenges. We'll have those everywhere realistically. But I think one of the core issues, which was for them to be able to look into the reported violations, to bring about historical record of the country's past, to work on issues of reconciliation and provide reparations, and then advise the government through its recommendations. That has been achieved. They have done their work, and it's the work that was done in a good way, despite the criticisms as expected.
Mangfi. Wow. Eh? Ibrahim. Ba. Wow, TRRC bi baaxoon na torop, baax na torop, cause daf ñu aware. Waaw, te ba pare xam nga ñun dafa mel ni dañ gumbo woon, so xam nga lu bari nag feeñu na sun kanam, xam nga. Wow, so it's very important pour nit ñi war a bàyyi xel comme si jëfin yi ak si waxtaan yi.
After the process, we have seen a bit changes in the media, despite there are continuous harassment and beating of journalists in the Gambia, but there is a significant change in the media fraternity, especially with the coming of the bill that deals with the information, called the Information Bill. This bill has given the media houses or journalists an extra mile to go in search of information, especially with government institutions. They are given the right to go and request for information at the institutions.
So what are the concerns? There have been several concerns from different individuals, particularly the victims, as to how the government is going to implement the recommendations. This is where some of the challenges are, whether there is political will to ensure that the TRC's recommendations are implemented, and whether the financial resources would be made available, and what other measures the government would take in order to ensure that they all go in tandem. Now, I appreciate that these things don't happen overnight. It takes a while, but we should not use that as an excuse for not taking action.
Hello, my name is Karamba Jalo. I work with the Center for Research and Policy Development. This was the time when a lot of issues surfaced, and there was an urgency, the need to not just rebrand Gambian institutions, but to rebuild them, to give them better outlooks from within and without, to ensure that they perform better. We've had other commissions and mechanisms, such as the Janet Commission, the CRC, and there is a trend that emerged. We have issues of not being, or the recommendations not being fully implemented. I am very much interested in seeing that we get to experience a different outcome vis-a-vis or in relation to the TRRC and the recommendations.
It's important to take this opportunity and, reform the governance system, reform the institutions, do a robust legal reforms that will help to consolidate our democratic values, that will help to yield a dividend in our democratic gains.
You look at countries like Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone, I also spoke to the man that was mainly behind their successful reconciliation process, John Coker. He had this process they call Fumble Talk. What he said to me was, when the transitional justice, when their TRC finished its work, the media was already concluding, because they had people shaking hands and hugging, I forgive you, on TV. So the media was already saying that Sierra Leone has succeeded in their transitional justice, people have reconciled and they are moving forward. But he knew differently. So he had to now go to the system and lobby and tell them that you are making a mistake. Reconciliation has not been done yet, because the communities were not part of it. And so he started to consult with the communities, and what they were interested in was not to prosecute Charles Taylor, who was in fact a foreign president that they have never seen. What they were interested in was the particular perpetrators who came into their community and committed violation. They wanted to understand why those people did what they did. So they wanted to have that personal interaction with those people, not watch it on TV. And that was what they did, organize these campfire processes where the perpetrator would come and face the victim he affected and explain. And in that way, they could come to a common understanding.
One of the issues we have talked about is that there needs to be prioritization. But in the process of prioritizing, some issues should not be left behind. And one of those is in the areas of gender justice and ensuring that the violations and abuses which women had encountered and the reparations they should receive by virtue of the fact that they are women should also be considered.
Victims are of the opinion that TRRC was set up to answer their questions, to give them the missing puzzle that they yearn for from the start. And if they now turn around to say that these recommendations are not going to be fully implemented, their understanding might not be, intact like promised to them, basically, or they envisaged.
That is, I think, where it is, this component of communication is absolutely important for transitional justice.
People believe that the transitional justice process is very slow. So probably government is doing certain things right, and those things might not be exposed, or people might not be exposed to those steps. So I think it's important for media to engage the relevant authorities in their various platforms, and also engage, as I said, various stakeholders who matters, the victims, the survivors, give them platforms to speak and also make their demands clear to government.
It is absolutely critical that people understand what is happening, why decisions are being made. It needs to be communicated to them in advance, not to wait until something happens and then the state or whoever comes out and tries to now explain what had happened in the past.
My name is Momodu Msar, and I am president of the Musicians Union of the Gambia. Musicians have a very big role to play. To talk about these problems in our songs, to talk about the interest base of the people, to check our authorities as well. What are they doing that we need to talk about? What are the things that they probably have forgotten that we need to remind them of? Because they have a responsibility to us, just like we have a responsibility to them as well. The normal people out there look up to these people as musicians, as people that will talk to them about the issues of life, our day-to-day activities, what are the things that affect us and so on. Man, how many people are out there who would see, for example, Killer Ace pass through and they all want to take a picture? They want to listen to you, what you say. They want to listen to your music, enjoy themselves, but also to look at the information that you have and conceive it, try to digest it and be themselves. So we can use these influential young people and take them across this country. They can look at every big community that we have. We can have meetings at the Bantaba. We can have focus group discussions. We can have convergence, of different sections of society. You talk about the youth, you talk about the old people, you talk about the opinion leaders, the alcalos, the village development committee. Bring them together, because you know what? All these people listen to music.
You have to look at the next generation and how all these things that we are doing is going to affect them. So for example, in South Africa now, they have a situation where apartheid was the issue during the transitional justice. That was dealt with, but the impact on children was not dealt with. So these children have grown up now. They did not experience apartheid. What they experienced was this new government, which they blame for all of the socio-economic problems that they have. They don't attribute those problems to apartheid. They only see what this government that they grew up in is doing. So I think in terms of implementation, we also as a country need to have that in mind. How violations affected young people is a critical thing to look at.
Yeah, one thing I don't as about another activist, as somebody from the grassroots, that live in the hood, I realize one thing. There has not been much change, especially in the security sector reform, especially in the areas of police brutality. We still have police, all the security out there still being brutal to people out there. I myself was detained, at the anti-crime unit, where you had a whole bunch of young people cramped up in one small space. Some been there for more than a week, denied their constitutional right. I see some get tortured and brutalized in front of my eyes. So personally, to me, I really don't feel like there's a whole bunch of change. Even if you look at the process, you have people like that came to the TRRC, mentioned and said, the wrongdoings they did, and how all of these perpetrators, some of them are still in key positions today, in this current administration. So as far as one of the elements of the transitional justice, which is non-reoccurrence, I really believe that a lot of things are reoccurring, since we are still putting back some people who are or who have been in key positions yesterday and have been perpetrators. So as a young person, or as somebody who represents the youth, through my music, I personally feel like the transitional justice process has been compromised by the lack of true reform, true institutional reform, security sector reform specifically.
Some of the root causes that led us to the coup of 1994 is because of unresolved issues at that time, with corruption, of people being accused of abuse of office, which led to the coup. So if you add all of those things and they become unresolved, people become more vulnerable to abuse, and human rights become non-existent. So we must do something about it. The dangers of not doing it is that you're just, passing the buck to the next person, because this has to be addressed. You cannot have your citizens harmed and missing and you do nothing about it. It is going to come not as an institution, but as a person. It's going to come back to you as a leader if you don't address it. It's going to come back to you. If there's no redress, and if retaliation start happening, divisions are bigger, it can make this country ungovernable, right? So we need to do. That's one reason why government should have a big interest in making sure that we're addressing these wrongs and people are brought together and we are communicating and engaging and moving forward together as a people.
So government having to be selective, or having to pick and choose, wouldn't work for us, because once they do that, they get to sideline a certain faction of the society, and we cannot let that happen.
Women have been crying for a very long time. Now we want to see the Gambian government to act upon that. We want to see that the voices of women are being heard, and not only being heard, but then laws and recommendations that are put in place for them to be implemented.
mo jamal be kumbo kan everyday mo dol ba mal fatale dol fa mal fata dol koto mal fata sa ni man na rek de sono ke je ni ku ya ba o be kel ni ku ya baldi en dafa na be government danna pour ye victimol ye ñafita victimol kana kumbo
nguur bi dañ ci war a taxaw is very important for the future of our xam nga children waaw loolu lu baax la suñ ci taxawee dinañu mën a gën a xam nga dinañu mën a gën a jokko ba pare dañoo am yërmande ci suñ diggante waaw wante waruñ ko ignore noonu rek waaw dañ ci war a taxaw in another way boo xam ne nit ñi dinañ ci jànga su ko defee xale yi duñ mun a xalaat façon xalaat yooyu anymore.
jërëjëf
forever. Thank you. jërëjëf.
For people like myself to be able to take this government seriously, then the government needs to take serious the implementation of the TRRC recommendation. This is an opportunity again for the government to ensure that victims know that the government is serious about human rights issues. This is an opportunity for the international community to know that the government is serious about law reforms and to ensure that the government is serious about making sure that the people that have violated other people's human rights are held accountable. So for me, I think this is a very big opportunity. This would also go to show the world whether we are serious people as Gambians or not.
I believe with the implementation of the recommendations, this country will be in another level when it comes to democracy, when it comes to press freedom, when it comes to justice, when it comes to human rights, when it comes to living in a dignified life as citizens of this country.
Learning from our experiences in the past during a dictatorship, but most especially learning from the perspectives and the experiences of victims and survivors during that dictatorial regime which took place for 22 years. We're able to learn ways on how we can consolidate and solidify our democratic transition. This is why it is important for us that the government puts in place all the necessary mechanisms to ensure the implementation of not just the TRRC's recommendation, but the recommendations of all the other transitional justice mechanisms, so we're able to build a just and equal and a democratic society where we can collectively contribute to our nation's socio-economic and political development.
But the whole world is watching the Gambia. The whole world is listening to Gambia to see how are they going to implement this recommendation from the TRRC. What has happened in the past 22 years should not happen in the Gambia here. So this is my fear. If the government didn't act according to the TRRC recommendation, what happened before, more than that could happen. So we are not praying for that.